Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is Lisa Kraft, and I'm an Agent Success Manager with Premier Marketing. And I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us today. With us today, we have Beverly Danner. Beverly is a Regional Sales Manager for the Ohio market. She does play a vital role in Anthem's sales team, okay? And today, she's going to be discussing the technique of selling over the phone. We are learning more now than ever that it's important for all of us and all of our agents to know how to reach clients in a non-face-to-face environment. So we're excited to hear your thoughts, Beverly, and get your insights on this. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Beverly now.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. As Lisa said, with all of the changes we've seen over the past several months, it is becoming very important to make sure you're comfortable selling over the phone, especially as we go into AEP. We are likely to see more seniors who don't necessarily want to meet face-to-face. And so some of the very basics of selling over the phone are pieces that we can forget about. So this presentation today is really just to remind you of those important details, or if you've never really sold over the phone, to help get you started in becoming comfortable with that. As Lisa said, I am one of the regional sales managers here in Ohio. I handle Southwest Ohio. And then on my team also is Lisa Perrin, who handles Northern Ohio, and Dave Emball, who is, in Central and Southeast Ohio. So you know who all of the players are here from a regional sales manager perspective. We are going to be adding a couple more people here soon, so you'll be seeing some additional names from us here in Ohio. So jumping right in. Getting a little ahead of myself here. Okay, so just a quick look at our agenda. The things we're going to be talking about today are personal skills, make the difference, product solutions, handling objections, closing the sale, and asking for referrals. Some of these, especially those last three, can get a little uncomfortable for some people. So hopefully some of the items we'll cover today will help you feel more comfortable when you're going through those processes. So the first thing you want to do when selling over the phone is really listen to determine your caller's mood. And the caller's mood can actually be detected by listening to their pitch. When you're talking on the phone, you can't see an individual's mood like you can when you're face-to-face, but you can hear it. And I know we've all heard that phrase, you can hear a smile on the telephone. And that's actually due to the higher pitch that's naturally adopted when someone speaks when they're smiling. Women's vocal cords, of course, are shorter than men's, and so that makes our voices higher pitched during a conversation, and then the emotional state of the individual has the most effect on their voice. So if we're in a state of fear or excitement, the muscles around our voice box tighten, and that tends to make our voice higher pitched. So even if we don't really understand what someone is saying to us over the phone, we can tell if their mood has changed by the pitch of their conversation. And then also the pace in which someone speaks is something else to really pay attention to. Some people talk faster than others, and then some people are just naturally slow speakers, but being fast or slow can help you determine that individual's emotional state. So if you have an excited or elated mood, that's going to be reflected by a quicker rate of delivery. And I happen to be a fast talker naturally. And then when I get excited, I talk that much faster, and I can hear my pitch increase when I'm having a conversation. So if you pay attention, you can tell If someone is in a excited mood, or if their delivery is slower, it may be that they're dejected. And something else that I find with myself is, because I do tend to talk so fast, it's hard for people to follow along sometimes. So I actually have a note that is taped on my computer that says slow down. And that's my reminder to slow down what I'm talking about, because it's easy for me to get so excited with information I'm sharing or helping train a broker that I can just, start talking so quickly that they can't even follow along. So don't be afraid to put little notes in your workspace to remind you of different things that you need to pay attention to. And then listening for pauses can also be very important. A pause can be because they've finished speaking, so they finished what they were going to say, or they could just need to take a breath. However, if several pauses are used, then it could indicate that the individual has some angst or anger built up. And an example of this is if you hear something like, "I am so angry, I can hardly speak." So those unusual pauses in a full sentence are a good indication of how the individual's feeling as well. So when you're listening for those, you want to pay attention to whether they're conveying something about the prospect's message or their current state of emotion. Okay, so building rapport. Why is building rapport so important? Oh, you know what? I think I may have skipped something here. Okay, no, we're good. So building rapport is important because it can affect the outcome of your conversation. When you're able to build rapport, your conversation is going to run much more smoothly. It's going to be enjoyable for both you and your prospect, and you're going to get much better results than in those conversations where that rapport has not been built and it's just uncomfortable and strained and just doesn't flow well. And building rapport is not at all about making your prospect your best friend. It simply is going to create that state where both of you are comfortable and can talk freely, and they're not afraid to share with you what's important to them as far as making a buying decision. You do always want to start the conversation with a warm-up, and you can do this with a simple question that will let your caller know that, just like them, you're human. So this could be something as simple as, "How is your day so far?" And most people are going to respond in a friendly manner, and it helps you and your client or prospect become comfortable and kind of break the ice, and then reply to their response with a relevant but positive response also. And then you want to keep that call moving forward. So if you've said, "How is your day so far?" Once they respond, you can say, "That's great. I'm glad you're having a good day. How can I help you with your call?" And then listening is probably one of the most important pieces of any conversation. And it can also be the most difficult because we are all so anxious to respond and chime in. And it's not because we're not, we're being rude. It's just we're excited to share as well. And so you want to employ active listening. And in order to do this, you need to avoid distractions and really allow yourself to concentrate on your prospect and that conversation you're having with them. You can also use reflective listening in this process, and reflective listening is where you really try to understand the customer's points and then repeat them back to the individual, and this allows you to ensure that you are fully understanding what they're saying. So it's also going to show them that you are mentally engaged and that you both have a mutual understanding of what's transpiring in that conversation. I talked a little bit at the beginning about smiling over the phone, and people really can sense your smile even if they can't see it. It also is going to put you in the right frame of mind. So it's harder to be enthused if you have a smile on your face. Something that I've employed in the past, and I know a lot of people who've really practiced in selling over the phone have done, is using a mirror. So when you're on that phone call and having that conversation, you have that mirror sitting right there to reflect back to you the whether you're smiling, what the emotions are that are on your face, because again, that all comes across during that conversation. And you want to make sure that you always let the caller know that you're listening. So you can do this by responding throughout the conversation with just some gentle ums or ahs that lets them know that you are following along with what they're saying. They are like verbal nods. You always want to let your prospect finish what they're saying, and it's really important that you do that with every call. If you are interrupting them, they can get very frustrated. And again, I know I really have to practice that because, as I said earlier, I get really excited in talking to someone and can't wait to chime in. So I really have to myself practice letting the person I'm talking to finish speaking and then chime in. So really listen to understand and not just to respond. The biggest thing that you always want to keep in mind is that common courtesy is just absolutely essential. Another thing that you can do is use words that your prospect is using, especially any adjectives that you may hear. They are using those words to describe something, and they're using that specific word or words that has relevance to them. And if you use an alternative word, it's not going to mean the same thing for them. So as an example of what I'm talking about here, if you're talking to them and they say the results were excellent, the word excellent was chosen because that's reflecting how they felt. And so when you are responding, you want to say something like, I agree with what you said earlier, the results were excellent. If you were to go back and say, I agree with what you said, the results were okay, it's going to subconsciously confuse your prospect because they didn't say they were okay. They said the results were excellent. So just be careful to use the same words that they're using throughout that conversation. And then you also want to make sure that you're showing empathy with them. And that simply means to share in their emotions, thoughts, or feelings. And this is another great way to build rapport. It can be done very simply by saying things such as, I understand what you mean. I can see where you're coming from. I understand why you would think that way. So just those very simple phrases to show that connection. These are also some things that you may want to jot down that you have by your phone when you're selling telephonically, just as little reminders, things that you can reference very quickly. And then you also want to create openings by using prompts and guides like I just talked about, making some notes of reference points, but you don't want to have a conversation based off of a script that you have prepared ahead of time. So when you're using a script, we're not natural at all when we're reading from a script. And if you have worked with a mentor or you have someone in your agency that has been training with you, we all have our different styles, and it's easy to replicate exactly the way the person teaching you is doing their sales calls. And that's great to use that as tips and starting points, but you want to make sure that when you actually are on that call, you are completely natural and not playing a role, which is how it will come across if you are actually using a script. Now, we have found from research that's been conducted that 90% of a caller's frustration comes from misaligned expectations. And those expectations come from previous experiences, word of mouth, what is being told to them. So just make sure that you are building the proper expectation throughout that call. And whenever possible, demonstrate commonality with that individual. This is going to help build that rapport that we talked about earlier, because people like to do business with people that they like and that they are comfortable with. So you can demonstrate commonality by finding something that obviously you both have in common. Things like if you're hearing a dog bark in the background and you're a dog lover, you can make reference to you hear the dog and how much you love dogs, especially in today's environment where we are working from home much more. You're going to hear those kinds of things more than you would in an office. A lot of people have kids home from school. So if you have children home and your prospect hears that, don't be afraid to acknowledge that. They may have children or grandchildren of their own. So just try to find that common ground. And then something else that's really important is to mirror their tone. So you want to reflect back to them their tone, their rate and style of speech. And this is going to demonstrate those strong listening skills that we've talked about that are so important to building that rapport. The listening skills can be used throughout the entire conversation along with those verbal nods and that repetition of their main points that are made throughout that discussion. And then once more, I want to mention how important it is to show that empathy throughout your call. Something that brokers just getting into selling telephonically struggle with a little bit is changing your mindset. It's easy when you're face-to-face to reflect all of these tips and, show your excitement of being there. But when you're selling telephonically, you really need to get yourself in the correct mindset. And so before you start that day's call, you want to remove any negative thoughts. Make sure you're smiling either with a note taped to your computer, that mirror that we talked about, anything that makes you feel will make your prospects feel that you are friendly, you're someone that's comfortable to talk to. It's safe for them to share their concerns, what they're looking for, all of those things that can be conveyed through simple conversation. Now, we all know how important first impressions are, And I think we've probably all heard that phrase, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And this is true, of course, whether you're meeting with someone in person or over the phone. Again, it can be a little bit more difficult over the phone to make that really spectacular first impression. So you want to make sure that you have your mindset where it needs to be at the beginning of your day, and then work in something personal if you can. So again, I talked a minute ago about if you hear the dog barking, or if you have, the children that they're hearing, if you know a hobby that they have, or something that they like, something else that they like to do. If they've been referred to you from one of their relatives, and you've gotten in touch with them through that way, you can bring that up again, but you want to make sure that it flows freely into the conversation. You don't want to throw it in there just to be throwing it in there. You want to find that good commonality, something personal about yourself, and share it. And then finding that connection with them is going to build instant rapport. So that's going to go a long way in making that conversation comfortable right off the bat. So another thing you can look at is, do you have the same name, or do you know if you grew up in the same neighborhood? Just whatever that common ground is. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to have your own style of enthusiasm. So don't want to be like the person who mentored you, the person that sits next to you in your office. You always want to be yourself, and that's going to reflect your style. And we all have different styles, so you want to make sure that that's what's coming across, that you are authentic, and that is what's going to attract people to you. When you practice self-confidence, your self-confidence grows. Again, I keep mentioning having those little prompts at your desk, but when you practice these things, the more comfortable you become with them, the more confidence you build. And confidence is an attractive character for people. So when you're dealing with someone who's confident, you're going to feel much better about buying from them than if you're kind of stumbling around and not, they're stumbling around not knowing for sure what they're talking about. So just practice all of, these tips, anything to help you build that confidence. Talked a little bit about writing out the phrases. Just have those around. So again, you can quickly reference them, not having to stop and really think through things. You have a few bullet points that you can quickly reference, keep the conversation flowing. And the more you do this, the more second nature this will become to you. We're going to talk a little bit more later on about objections, which I know can be a real stumbling block. So we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail. And then last but not least here, keep in mind that we have no idea what other people have going on in their lives, especially in this pandemic time. People are dealing with a lot of things that they may not have dealt with previously. And so if you're on a call and someone is rude or they're abrupt, do not take that personally. Keep your composure. Don't get defensive. Don't, argue back or anything. Just stay very positive. And remember that it's not personal. Again, we have no idea what they're dealing with. So we want to just always show that respect. And by keeping it where you know it's not personal, you're able to then move on to your next call and still be successful. Now, asking good qualifying questions is important regardless of whether you are selling telephonically or if you're meeting with someone in person. And you want to use these questions as tactics. So taking a slightly different look at the qualifying portion of your call, you want to make sure you're qualifying well, because if you fail to qualify well, you are going to dramatically decrease your ability to close that sale. And to begin that qualifying process, you want to guide your prospect into them making their own buying decision. And so that's going to involve you leading them to that decision through those strategic qualifying questions. Your goal here is really to gain their attention by asking the right high-value questions. So by doing this, you are accomplishing a number of things. You are establishing your credibility as an expert. You're uncovering what their real needs are. You're going to deepen that customer relationship, and then also lay a foundation for how you're going to present your sales solutions to them. If you don't qualify well, you're not going to get their attention. And the way you ask those questions indicates to your prospect whether you are really interested in their business and helping them, and whether you were really listening, or just, not really engaged in that call. These questions are also going to establish your credibility. So if they don't really know you, those questions that you're asking are going to help them see that you are indeed interested in helping them solve their needs. And you'll then get to the point where, in the presentation, where you are sharing your solution. So it's critical that you know what those needs are, and that happens by asking those qualifying questions. And remember that those questions are going to guide you to help determine what they need, which is then going to allow you to educate them on the different plans and why you will be recommending certain benefits or products to them based on the answers to their questions. So kind of tying in what I was talking about earlier with changing your mindset, you need to prepare mentally, physically, everything when you're getting ready to sit down and sell telephonically. Your sales calls over the phone are going to be faster paced. So you want to make sure you're organized. And not only does that include, having your notes laid out, smiling, making sure your posture is good, but you want to have all of the tools ready that you may need throughout that call. So you'll see here the Doctor Finder, Prescription Finder, Medicare.gov. Those are all sites that you want to have up and ready to access if you need to throughout the call. And then, of course, you want to be completely comfortable and know inside and out how to navigate the electronic scope of appointments process and or the voice signature process. We've been doing multiple webinars on these tools, and we will continue to do those throughout August and September, going right into AEP. So if that's not something that you've been able to join, look for additional webinars coming up. Being proficient in those tools is going to be key to you having a successful AEP, and then going into 2021 ready to grow your book of business. And then again, if you have had any past conversations with this specific prospect, you want to make sure you have that information available to reference as well. So if they have that dog, bring that up during the call. Whatever personal connection you've established, make sure that you're adding that into that conversation. And then, of course, figuring out what their SEP is, or are they in a guarantee issue situation. In order to do this, you're going to have your questions outlined that you need to ask. So some things such as, do you have Medicare Parts A and B? Do you have a chronic condition? Do you currently have Medicaid benefits? You want to ask all of the special election period questions to determine if they do fall under that SEP. Also, it's really important to know if there's anyone else who helps them make those healthcare decisions, because if there is, you want to try to get that person tied into these conversations as soon as possible. One of the things that's always very important is our scope of appointment, and you want to make sure that you have that completed as soon as possible, because that's going to show them that you are a legitimate agent, that you are being compliant with everything that CMS requires. And as I just mentioned, we have added the electronic scope of appointment to our mProducer site, as well as that voice talk platform, which is a voice signature. So if you need any help in any of those, just let us know, and we're happy to do some training with you one-on-one with that if that's what you need. Trying to determine what their needs are. So this is where it's really important to employ those active listening skills and knowing the questions that you want to ask. And just want to let you guys know too that we will have a copy of this presentation available to you. So if you find any of these questions helpful that you might want to start implementing, you'll have a copy of this presentation so that you can just pull some of these to add to what you're currently doing. So in determining what their needs are, some of the questions you can ask are, what plan do you have now? Can you tell me what you like or you don't like about that plan? What is most important in choosing a health plan? What types of services are you looking for? Do you prefer paying a higher premium up front with little to no cost sharing? Or would you prefer a lower premium that has co-payments for most services? Do you have a budget in mind for premiums? Do you mind using a network of doctors? And then, are you taking any medications? You want to ask as few questions as possible so that they don't feel overwhelmed, but it's also important to ask the right questions to be able to educate them and help determine what's going to best fit their needs. And above all, you just want to make sure that you are always staying compliant throughout the call. When you get to the portion of the call where you are making your product recommendations, in addition to selling the medical plan, you want to sell the extras first. So if you're looking at a Medicare supplement opportunity, you want to make sure that they know that Silver Sneakers is included in that plan. The RX discount card is included. Anthem Extras is available. And in the front of our Medicare supplement kits, you can see a list of all of those value-added benefits that are available to them. So the Silver Sneakers that's built right in, it talks about that discount drug card. It talks about the Anthem Extras, which is our dental and vision that can be purchased in addition to the supplement plan. And then also make sure they know that they have the freedom of choice for their physicians and how a supplement plan provides full or nearly full coverage. And then with the MAPD plan, you want to talk about all of the things that are included there. So the OTC, dental, vision, hearing aids, Silver Sneakers, those are huge benefits that do set us apart. I think our $3,000 hearing aid benefit is probably one of the most comprehensive. So make sure you're selling those value-added benefits. The social determinants of health that you see here, that is referencing our essential extras and the 9 different options that they will have in 2021. So letting them know that they have the choice of one of those 9 options. The fact that there is a very low or in some plans no premium. Their prescription drug benefit is going to be included in that MAPD plan, and then make sure you're reviewing those copay tiers. Also, keep in mind, one of the things I like to remind all of you on a regular basis is about our PERS unit, which is included in all of our MAPD plans as well. It stands for Personal Emergency Response System, but it's not used just for emergencies. This is a benefit that is included in all of our MAPD plans at no cost to the member and gives them access to requesting help, asking a question through a unit that is sent to them through our vendor. And we're the only carrier that is providing at no cost a GPS-enabled PERS unit. So if you have more questions about PERS, reach out to one of us and we're happy to get that to you, or you can get in touch with Premier. They can share that information. It's a great value. And the fact that there's no cost to our members is huge. It runs about $55 a month if they were to buy that on their own. And especially again with the pandemic that we're in, it can make the difference in someone who lives on their own being able to access help or not. So I get very excited about our PERS unit. I think everyone should have it regardless of whether they feel a need for it right now or not. So again, if you have any questions on our PERS unit, just let us know. And then when you're diving into that product discussion, you want to keep it at a high level overview. You do not want to dig into the down and dirty details, if you will. So covering things such as the hospitalization, doctor copays, ER copays, that maximum out of pocket, and making sure they understand what that maximum out of pocket means and is, and how that impacts their plan. You want to compare costs, so the premiums, the copays, and the medication comparison. These are all the things that are going to help, again, solidify you as the expert. And as I said, all of those value added benefits that we just talked about. Throughout the call, you want to always be taking their temperature throughout. So here's a few examples of some of the things that you can say. So first is, great, I'm confident that we can find a plan that fits your needs. After that, we'll proceed with the application process. Are you ready to get started? Also, based on everything we've talked about so far, is there any other information you need before making a decision? And then another example is, based on everything we talked about, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not interested at all, and 10, you are ready to enroll, where do you stand so far? What do we need to get you to that 10? Going into handling objections, the dreaded objection conversation. We're going to take a look at a process that Jack Carew outlines in his book, You'll Never Get No for an Answer. It's called the LAER process, and it's basically just a strategy that you can use to handle objections. By using this, you'll see anger is diffused, indifference from your prospect is replaced by interest, any impatience that they're feeling is reduced, and then preoccupation is impossible. So it's just showing them that you care about what is important to them. This is what the process looks like here. So you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, listen, that then goes off to the right to acknowledge, which then goes down to explore. And from explore, you can either go back up to listen, or it may take you back over to respond. So starting with that listen, that first step, listen, again, we've talked about this repeatedly, but you want to listen to understand and not with that intent to respond. No matter how much we want to chime in and share our excitement. You want to listen to understand. And then the listening is also going to connect you to your customer. So it gets you out of your head and into theirs. It's going to demonstrate the interest, sensitivity, that empathy we talked about, and care. And it's going to allow you to be in their operating reality. So we've already talked a lot about listen, but this just kind of sums up some of those points. And then acknowledge. Again, we've talked about this pretty frequently as well, but this is when you acknowledge what you're hearing, what they're saying, it reflects to them that you are interested in meeting their needs. You're concerned about coming up with the best solution to their problem. It is an opportunity to tell them and show them that you're listening, and that body language comes into play here. And you'll see on the slide, it says even over the phone. So all of those things we talked about in the beginning, how your body language impacts how you're coming across on the phone. That's so important. And then the customer is going to feel safe in communicating all of their concerns because you've built that rapport, you've acknowledged what's important to them, and then it allows you to move on to the third step here, which is exploring. And so this is where you are trying to uncover what the specific issue is that is causing them some resistance. And you're asking for help in understanding their problem, doing this through the various questions. Again, so important to listen, to hear, not to respond. So giving feedback, acknowledging you hear what they're saying. And then when you get into the final step, this is going to be where you respond. So you are then overcoming their objection, and you're doing this through a recommendation, an alternative, a solution statement, or a suggestion for the next step. We're going to take a look at some specific examples here in a moment. So at that point, you're really trying to close that objection stage and move into closing that sale. So just to take a look at it here, again, you'll see it goes from L over to A, down to E, potentially back up to L, and you may have to do that little triangle several times and then eventually go from the E down to or over to the response. So let's take a look at some common objections and different ways you may use to respond to these. Again, you want to make a list of some of the common objections that you've heard throughout your selling career and have some possible responses. So these are just some examples of things that you can use. The best time to handle an objection is always before it occurs. So you want to make sure you're building some of those common objections you've been receiving into your presentation. If you get, I need to talk it over with my daughter, an example of something you could say back is, that makes good sense. Based upon what we discussed so far, do you feel positive enough about Anthem to recommend your enrollment into the Anthem preferred HMO plan to your daughter? If you get, my plan has lower copays than the Anthem plan you've presented. You're right, your plan does have lower copays. However, I feel the added value of the essential extra benefits that Anthem offers is can make a difference in the quality of your life. Is that additional care worth the difference in copays? I need to talk to my spouse first. Here we have a couple of different options for you. This is a very common objection that we get. So the first response is, great, I understand. I have the ability to conference call with your spouse right now. Should we get him or her on the line? Or, I totally understand, and I'm sure I can answer any questions your partner has also. let's set up a time to follow up. I can give you a call tomorrow at the same time, or does Thursday work better for you? Also, I completely understand that you would want to discuss this with your partner. If you have a few minutes right now, I can help you identify a plan that meets your budget and healthcare needs so that you can have an informed conversation with your partner. The dreaded, can you send me the plans? That's no problem. There are multiple plan options that I could send you to review. However, because I'm well versed in all Anthem products, I'm confident that in a few minutes, I can help you narrow down the plans to save you a lot of time and energy and answer any questions that come up so you're better informed. Then I'd be happy to send what makes sense to you. Or I would be happy to send you the plans, but a lot of my customers really appreciate being walked through the finer points of the policy by an expert. Since you've already got me on the phone, allow me to take a few minutes to explain the benefits and any questions you have. Let me think about it. I understand. This is an important decision. Have I answered all the questions you have about the coverage that's available to you? What is it about the plan that you're unsure about? Do you have a specific need I was not able to address? I understand. What is your deciding factor that will take you to a decision? And then, and I really like this one, I feel like I haven't done my job. What did I miss during our conversation? Now, everybody expects you to ask for the sale. It's just when you're in a sales situation, it is just what is expected. So your prospect knows you're going to ask for that sale. So when you do that, you can, some examples of what you can say without, coming right out and saying, are you ready to buy, is just, let's get you started for the Anthem Preferred HMO, kind of that assumptive close. I can enroll you over the phone right now. Do you have your Medicare card? When would you like your coverage to start? You definitely want to go for the sale before sending them an enrollment kit. So one of the objections we just reviewed is how to overcome that. Can you just send me the enrollment kit, which allows you then to go for the sale again and then send them the enrollment kit after you've closed that down. The prospect, as I said, does expect you to ask for that close, and these are some of the ways you can make that assumptive close work. Some other mini statements that you can say as you're going through the presentation with them are things like, does that make sense? When your coverage starts, we want to be sure that you take advantage of the first quarter of OTC. So as you're talking about the different benefits within the plan, throwing in those presumptive close statements at the same time. Another thing that is really important that I think can absolutely change the course of your business is asking for referrals. A lot of people don't know that we work off of referrals, and so they're probably more than happy to give you a referral. They just don't know that that's how you work. So letting them know that is so important. Some of the things you can say, some examples here are, I grow my membership by word of mouth. You want to educate them on how referrals with Medicare work. So saying something like, for your protection, your sister can call me. You want to send a thank you card with every person that you talk to, and always include several business cards. Don't just send one, because you want to make sure they have extras to hand out as needed. And then also refresh their memory. Something like a brother or sister, your neighbor, someone you do business with, are you in a club or organization? Any of these people that might need help the way I've helped you today. And then also, you've been so courteous and polite today. I've really enjoyed helping you. Do you know someone who may also benefit from these services? So again, just working these into a form that is comfortable for you. So I know I've covered a ton of information today. As I said, I will be getting this presentation, making this presentation available to you. I think we might have just a couple of minutes. So Lisa, I don't know if you want to open it up to any questions, or if you want to, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, no problem, and thank you. It all sounded really good. There's definitely a lot of things we could take back from this, And I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar. And, if you guys do run into questions, I don't have any here in the chat right now, but if you do run into any questions at all, you can contact your agent success manager here at Premier, okay? So just give us a call, and she did mention that the presentation will be sent to us as well. So, if you have any questions, give us a call at 800-365-8208, okay? And thanks again, Beverly, and everybody, have a good day. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. I appreciate your time.